Are you struggling with student loan debt? Well, this Smile Money conversation is for you.
When we graduated, we had about 100K of undergrad student loans. So as you can imagine, that equates to about $1,000 a month in student loan payments.
Hi everyone, I'm Jason, founder of Frugal and author of You Only Live Once, the roadmap to financial wellness and a purposeful life. And today I'm opening up the vault once again and sharing a conversation I've had with David Carlson, the founder of Young Adult Money and author of Hustle Away Debt. David and I discussed how him and his wife had over $100,000 student debt and how he used side hustles to help him pay them off, and how you too can do the exact same thing. So you want to definitely stay tuned to listen to this 20-minute conversation with David and get some tips and some resources to help you hustle away your debt. Without further ado, let's welcome David.
So David, what does financial health mean to you?
So when I think about financial health, I think there's kind of a continuum of people that you like. Let's think of somebody going to a gym. If someone hasn't been to a gym in a decade, then just going to the gym and walking a quarter mile might be a really big step. So they're moving along the continuum of physical health there. So we're thinking about financial health. I also think of it as a continuum. For example, if somebody hasn't checked their credit score ever, them checking their credit score is a step in the right direction. In an ideal situation, they might be checking their credit score maybe 12 times a year, so once a month or maybe once a quarter. So when I think of financial health, I definitely think of it as a continuum of you're either progressing towards having better financial health or you're falling back and falling off the wagon, I guess.
The book that you wrote, which is really I want to say an encyclopedia of all the things that someone can do. And it was such an easy read and very effective. And I've actually given that book to a number of people. And so sorry about that. So that probably impacted your sales. But I say, hey,
That's
read it.
okay.
Read it, the resource, youngadultmoney.com. You can go in there, but you can find different side hustles, find different ways to earn money to go pay off debt. So what's your money story? What led you to founding Young Adult Money?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with my wife and I in college. When we graduated, we had about 100K of undergrad student loans. So as you can imagine, that equates to about $1,000 a month in student loan payments. And this is actually something that's happening a lot across the US. We hear a lot about it. Student loan debt's increasing. The average amount of debt that students are graduating with is increasing as well. But when you think about it, somebody's wage when they first graduate college is usually the least amount of money they're going to make. So you got all these new college grads who have this big student debt burden on them, but they're also making most likely the least amount of money they're going to make. And they're trying to figure out life and figure out how to make all these things work in their finances. So for us, I mean, me and my wife, we both have big dreams. There's a lot that we want to do. She went into psychology, so she was for sure getting her master's. I was considering getting an MBA, but it's like, how do we do all of this? And even if I don't get my MBA, I wanted to potentially start a business. And I think other college grads probably can relate. It's really difficult to imagine a life doing that when you have that much student debt kind of pulling you back, you could say. So I was motivated to find a way to offset that $1,000 a month through side hustles. So I was still gonna, work hard at my corporate finance job, corporate accounting job, and try to move forward in that. But in my spare time, I was also looking for ideas and ways to actually make extra money and offset that $1,000 a month. So not necessarily pay down all the debt, but at least take the effect of it out of the equation and be able to invest, save money, work towards other financial goals without having the student loans holding me back, as has been the case with many people these days.
I've actually kind of taken your approach and I've actually started doing a bunch of side hustles just as an experiment. You titled the book Hustle Away Debt. And we've talked about the hustle. What was the mindset? What were you going through? What was the inspiration for the book?
So I wrote the book about 4 years after I started Young Adult Money. And really what had happened in those 3 to 4 years was, what did I keep going back to on the site? It was side hustles, how to make extra money, how to increase your income. Because there's a lot of content out there, and we have it on Young Adult Money too, about cutting your expenses, about all the other things you can do besides increasing your income. But I think that side hustles have now become a very important part of, especially with people who have student loan debt, a very important part of their financial health and how they can get some confidence with their finances. Because if you have an extra $1,000 coming in a month, you just feel a lot more confident financially that you were able to do that. Heck, even a couple $100, that's just a huge boost to some people. So for me, when I wrote the book, I really have a heart for people that feel like they're in a difficult financial situation, like I was, and me and my wife were, where we have $100K of student loan debt. We're wondering, like, are we going to be able to take vacations? Are we going to be able to buy a house? All of these question marks that came because of the debt. And it just got compounded by the fact that, again, I keep going back to it, but when you're first out of college, you're usually making the least amount of money you're going to make. You're at entry level. Promotions, probably, even if they come often, it's probably going to be like once a year, and it's going to be a bump to your finances. But side hustles really give you a proactive thing that you can take on in your spare time. And it's never been easier throughout history to actually find something where you can make extra income in your spare time. So there's a huge range of side hustles. I've tried a variety of them, and it really comes down to what you're trying to accomplish. So for some people, they're in a really difficult financial situation, and people hate to hear this, but honestly, working retail or some sort of delivery job is typically the easiest way and the most reliable way to make some extra money. But if you want to potentially start a business someday, the debt actually might help you, because it forces you to keep your 9 to 5 and actually find ways to make your business work in your spare time. Because if you can make it work in your spare time, then that's going to be kind of a way to prove that you can do that full time and give you the confidence to quit your full-time job and build that business.
I get asked a lot about should I quit my job to pursue my passion or pursue a business? And I haven't heard anyone say, keep your full-time job and do this part-time and see if you can really sustain yourself. Because if you can sustain yourself part-time, then you realize that this is a viable business option.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a living, and then you can leave the 9 to 5. In the personal finance world, we talk a lot about cutting expenses, right? And you mentioned it. It's like there are all these articles to cut expenses, and there's only so much expenses that can be cut. I mean, that's the truth. To the point where you're living bare bones and you're just truly unhappy. And that, to me, is not financial wellness. You're not limited in how much money you can earn or you can make through these side hustles. And I think that is what's important. So yeah, you can make an extra $100, a couple $100 could mean a world of difference from someone who's financially stressed. And so making an additional $1,000, as you mentioned, that's a huge leap.
And I'd say, again, it depends what your goal is. So for some people, doing something that's more short term, where you're looking for predictable money. For example, I have a friend at work, him and his wife, they actually served on the weekends for 2 years to pay for their wedding in cash. So they had a very specific goal, very defined time period. They weren't trying to build a business. They weren't trying to, take a risk where they could make a lot of money or no money. It's like they just wanted this amount of money to pay for the wedding. So stuff like that, I think, is a good example where you want something predictable. But going back to the business idea, so let's say you're doing a side hustle to fill a gap as far as your finances. So for us, my wife and me, that definitely was what we were doing, covering that $1,000. Well, that was 6 or 7 years ago. So now I've gotten a few promotions. I don't necessarily need that, or I don't feel as crunched to get that $1,000. I can still build or test out business ideas in my spare time. The nice thing is I don't have to make money on it. I can break even, or even, potentially lose a few grand testing out a business idea. So I think that's something that some of the more entrepreneurial leaning people might want to consider, is that side hustles really cover a huge variety of ideas. So it's not just walking dogs or driving Ubers or whatnot. It can be something a little more abstract, and it can be personal to you. So if you're trying to think of what can I do to make extra money, maybe you don't want to do some of those more typical side hustles like house sitting, like I just said, dog walking, working retail, or even like blogging, freelance writing, which has become really big. Maybe you don't want to do that. Well, what can you do? Is there something that you can consult on? You might know about this, but Pinterest VAs, so virtual assistants on Pinterest, huge demand for that because most bloggers don't want to actually spend the time to pin every day or every week. Same here. And there seems to be, at least when I looked, there's a huge shortage of, I just need somebody who knows Pinterest, knows it well, knows the ins and outs, at least knows more than me that I can hand this off to. Heck, I'll pay you a couple $100 for your time. Maybe you're only spending 2 hours a week, maybe 3 hours a week doing the work, maybe not even that. So if you like Pinterest, you're going to get paid to manage someone's Pinterest board. And if you enjoy doing that, there really is enough clients potentially to do that full time if that's what you want to do. You don't have to. You could just do it part time and scale up or scale down as you see fit. But really looking at what your interests are. For me, one of the first things I did out of college was actually did Excel spreadsheet consulting. And I didn't even seek this out. A friend who owns a business reached out to me and said, hey, I have these spreadsheet needs and I don't have anybody that can do it. I just need it done. So I just sat down, got the requirements, kind of worked through it. And I actually got to learn some new skills that I applied directly to my 9 to 5 in accounting. So just thinking about what works well for you, what would fit with your lifestyle and where your skills are can really help you get a creative side hustle that you can stick with, because it's not easy to stick with a side hustle. It's your spare time that you're doing this work. So you got to make sure it's something that you can actually stand. Or if you're doing something like the people who save for their wedding by serving in a restaurant on the weekend, doing that has a very defined time frame. And most people, they're not going to love doing that, but they know that I'm only going to do this for 1 to 2 years and then I'm done.
I like that. If you're thinking about doing a side hustle, you create a goal, a reason why you're doing the side hustle, and then you have a time frame, and then this way you know that it's for a specific goal, it's for a specific need or a specific want. I do have conversations with people who just want side hustles indefinitely, and also what happens is that it eats away at their free time, and then all of a sudden they have their full-time job, they have a couple of side hustles, and they're miserable, and they're making that extra grand. And so it's always like, well, what's the purpose behind it? And I like your take. And I was going to ask you, what is your tip? Because we're at the last half of the last part of the segment. Like, what's your tip? And you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly it. It's like finding something that I believe that you're good at and that there is a need. Again, someone's looking at, how do I supplement my income? How do I make extra money? Think about what you do best, what you would enjoy. So this way it doesn't feel that much like work. And, because I don't envision financial health and financial wellness being when you're working 80 hours a week, regardless if one is a full-time job and the other is like 4 different side hustles.
Hey, maybe a short period of time. I mean, you can make it work.
Well, yeah.
Eventually you do have to change course though, and it's not sustainable forever. So keeping in mind what you're working towards is key.
Can you please share with everyone where they can find more information about you and how they can connect with you, and also where they can get a copy of your book?
Yeah, so starting with the book, you can go to Amazon.com, search Hustle Away Debt, and you'll find it on there. Otherwise, go into youngadultmoney.com and just looking on there, you'll see side hustle resources, other resources. And then if you want to contact me directly, you can email me through the site, or you can reach out to me on Twitter at DavidCarlson1 or at Young Adult Money. And yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, for your time. I appreciate it. And again, enjoy the rest of your evening. And I hope to see you when I'm out in the Midwest soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Thank you so much.